The leftover meatloaf tasted like cardboard, but then again, everything Nicole cooked these days had the flavor of resentment baked right in. I sat at our kitchen table at 11:30 p.m., reheating dinner while she worked late again. The microwave hummed its lonely tune, and our golden retriever Max watched me with those sympathetic brown eyes that seemed to say, "I know, buddy, I know." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The front door slammed hard enough to rattle the picture frames on the hallway wall. Nicole's heels clicked against the hardwood floor with that sharp, impatient rhythm I'd grown to hate. She appeared in the doorway, still in her HR manager power suit, looking at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "You're still up," she said. Not a question, not caring about the answer. "Waiting for my wife to come home." I kept my voice level, though my jaw was tight enough to crack teeth. "Thought maybe we could talk." Nicole laughed, but there was no humor in it, just cold, bitter amusement. "Talk? About what, Grant? Your exciting day-saving lives in the ambulance? Your thrilling stories about CPR and drug overdoses?" I stood up, tried to move toward her, maybe salvage something from this train wreck of a marriage. "Nicole, we used to—" She shoved me back, hard. Her manicured nails caught my shirt, and I stumbled against the counter. The look in her eyes was pure disgust. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "You disgust me, Grant. You know that? I'd rather kiss our dog than let you put your hands on me." The words hit like a physical blow. 11 years of marriage, and it had come to this. I looked down at Max, who had wandered over to sit between us, tail wagging hopefully. Even he could sense the poison in the air. "You know what?" I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Maybe I'll take you up on that suggestion." I walked past her, grabbed my overnight bag from the hall closet, and whistled for Max. The dog followed me eagerly, probably grateful to escape the tension. Nicole didn't say a word as I loaded him into my pickup truck. She just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me leave like she was counting down the seconds until I was gone. As I drove through the rain-slicked streets of Cedar Drive, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. 11 years ago, I'd carried Nicole across the threshold of that house. Now I was leaving with the dog, and honestly, Max was better company anyway. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm as I headed toward downtown. In the rearview mirror, I could see our house getting smaller, the porch light Nicole had left on, looking like a beacon for someone who wasn't me. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, probably her, ready to apologize or pick another fight. I didn't check. Instead, I thought about the past 6 months, the late nights at the office, the new perfume, the way she'd started password protecting her phone, the credit card statements with charges I didn't recognize. I'd been a paramedic for 15 years, and I knew the signs of a life bleeding out. Our marriage had been flatlined for months. I pulled into the parking lot of the Rusty Anchor, the dive bar where I'd been spending more and more of my free time lately. Mick Dugan, the owner and my boxing coach, was still behind the bar, wiping down glasses with the methodical precision of a man who'd been doing it for 30 years. "Grant," he said, not looking up. "You look like hell." "Feel worse," I said, settling onto a bar stool. Max curled up at my feet, already more relaxed than he'd been in months. Nicole and I just had our final round. Mick poured me a whiskey without being asked. "Final round implies there was a fair fight. From what I've seen, she's been wearing you down slowly for months." I knocked back the drink, felt the burn in my throat. "She's cheating on me, Mick." "I know," he said simply. That stopped me cold. You know? Everyone knows Grant. Small town, big mouths. She's been seen around with that pretty boy from her office, Chad something. Chad Wexler, Nicole's boss, the golden boy of Morrison & Associates HR Consulting. I'd met him at the company Christmas party, all perfect teeth and expensive suits. The kind of guy who'd never worked a day of real labor in his life, never pulled a fading kid from a car wreck or performed CPR on someone's grandmother in a grocery store parking lot. "How long?" I asked. 3 months, maybe 4. They've been meeting at that motel out on the bypass. Mick refilled my glass. "I'm sorry, Grant. I thought about telling you, but..." "But what? You thought I was too stupid to figure it out on my own? I thought you were too good a man to deserve it." I sat there in the dim light of the bar, rain pattering against the windows, my dog sleeping at my feet, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not sadness, not even anger. Something worse. Calculation. "Mick," I said, "you still got that private investigator friend? The one who helped you catch your ex-wife with the insurance money?" Mick's eyes met mine, and I saw understanding pass between us. "Trevor Marsh. He's expensive, but he's thorough. Call him." I finished my drink and stood up, Max stretching and yawning as he got to his feet. The rain had stopped, and through the bar's windows I could see the lights of Cedar Drive twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there, Nicole was probably texting Chad, complaining about her awful husband who just didn't understand her. She was right about one thing. I didn't understand her anymore, but I was about to understand her a lot better. And she was going to understand exactly what kind of man she'd decided to throw away. Trevor Marsh looked exactly like what Central Casting would order for a private investigator. Rumpled suit, 5 o'clock shadow at 9 in the morning, and eyes that had seen too much of humanity's worst impulses. He spread the photos across the table at the diner like he was dealing cards, each one a perfect shot of my wife's betrayal. "Your instincts were right," Trevor said, sipping his coffee. "Nicole Fowler and Chad Wexler, 3 months of regular meetings, hotel receipts, restaurant charges, even a weekend trip to Chicago she told you was a work conference." I studied the images. Nicole laughing at something Chad said. Nicole's hand on his chest as they stood outside the Sunset Motel. Nicole kissing him in the parking lot of Romano's, the Italian place where we'd had our first date. "How much do you want to know?" Trevor asked. "Everything." He pulled out a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. "Chad Wexler, 42, divorced twice, currently married to wife number 3, senior HR director at Morrison & Associates, makes about twice what you do, lives in one of those new condos downtown, drives a BMW, belongs to the country club." "Married?" I said. "Oh yeah. Wife's name is Patricia. She's a real estate agent, does pretty well for herself. No kids, but they've got 2 dogs and a cat." Trevor grinned. "She has no idea her husband's been playing house with your wife." I flipped through the folder. Financial records, phone logs, more photographs. Chad and Nicole weren't just having an affair, they were planning a life together. Hotel searches in other cities, apartment listings, even a joint credit card application. "There's more," Trevor said. "Your wife's been talking to a divorce attorney, Linda Kowalski downtown. She specializes in high-asset divorces, the kind where wives walk away with everything." The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. "High asset? I'm a paramedic. We've got the house and my truck and maybe 20 grand in savings. She's been inflating your assets, claiming you have hidden accounts, unreported income. She's setting you up to lose everything, Grant." I closed the folder and leaned back in the booth. Around us, the morning crowd of construction workers and early shift nurses went about their business, oblivious to the fact that my entire world had just been turned inside out. "What's this going to cost me?" I asked. "For what I've given you? 3 grand. But Grant," Trevor leaned forward, "this is just the beginning. You want to fight back, really fight back, it's going to cost more, and it's going to get ugly." I thought about Nicole's face last night, the pure contempt in her eyes. I thought about Chad Wexler's smug smile at the Christmas party. I thought about 11 years of marriage being flushed down the drain for a man who probably couldn't change a tire if his life depended on it. How ugly. Trevor's grin was sharp as a knife, ugly enough to make them both wish they'd never met. That afternoon, I sat in my truck outside Morrison & Associates, watching the glass tower where my wife worked. The building was all sharp angles and reflective surfaces, the kind of place where people in expensive suits made decisions that affected other people's lives without ever getting their hands dirty. At 5:30, Nicole emerged with Chad. They didn't touch, they were too smart for that. But I could see the intimacy in the way they walked together, the way she laughed at something he said. They separated at the parking garage, Nicole heading toward her Honda, Chad toward his BMW. I followed Chad. He drove to the gym first, some upscale place with floor-to-ceiling windows where you could see people running on treadmills that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Then to a wine bar in the trendy part of downtown, where he met two other guys in suits. They talked and laughed and probably complained about their wives while drinking wine that cost $50 a glass. Finally, at 9 p.m., Chad headed home to his condo complex, Riverside Towers, 30 floors of glass and steel overlooking the river. I parked across the street and watched him disappear into the lobby. My phone buzzed. A text from Nicole. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I laughed out loud, startling Max, who was sleeping in the passenger seat. Working late. Right. 20 minutes later, Nicole's Honda pulled into the visitor parking at Riverside Towers. I sat there for 3 hours, watching the lights in what I assumed was Chad's condo, thinking about what Trevor had said. It was going to get ugly. Good. I'd spent 15 years cleaning up other people's messes, patching up the damage from their bad decisions, trying to save lives that sometimes couldn't be saved. Now it was time to make some messes of my own. When Nicole finally emerged at midnight, her hair was mussed and her lipstick was gone. She looked satisfied, like a cat who'd been into the cream. She didn't notice my truck as she drove past, heading home to the house where she'd pretend to have been working late at the office. I gave her a 10-minute head start, then followed. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. Nicole's car was already in the garage, and I could see the blue glow of the television through the living room windows. She was probably already in her pajamas, ready to play the part of the exhausted working wife. Instead of going inside, I walked around to the backyard. Max followed, happy to explore his territory. The motion sensor light clicked on, and I could see into our bedroom window. Nicole was there, changing clothes, and for a moment I felt a stab of the old longing. Then I remembered the photos in Trevor's folder, and the longing turned to something harder. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the pictures I'd taken of Chad's condo building, of Nicole's car in the visitor parking, of the two of them walking together. Not as good as Trevor's professional shots, but good enough to start a war. The next morning, Nicole was already gone when I woke up on the couch. She'd left coffee in the pot, which was more consideration than she'd shown me in months. I poured a cup and found a note on the counter. "Grant, we need to talk when I get home. This can't go on." I almost laughed. She was right. This couldn't go on. But not in the way she thought. I called in sick to work, first time in 2 years, and spent the morning at Mick's gym, beating the hell out of a heavy bag. Each punch was Chad's smug face, Nicole's contemptuous laugh, the 11 years I'd wasted believing in something that was already gone. "You're going to hurt yourself," Mick said, watching me work. "Or someone else." "That's the idea." "Grant." He stepped closer, his voice serious. "Whatever you're planning, think it through. Don't do something that'll ruin your life just to ruin theirs." I stopped punching and turned to face him. Mick had been like a father to me since my own dad passed away 5 years ago. He taught me to box, given me a place to drink when I needed to escape, listened to me complain about my marriage without judgment. If anyone had the right to give me advice, it was him. "They've already ruined my life, Mick. I'm just returning the favor." That evening, I was waiting in the kitchen when Nicole came home. She looked surprised to see me there, but not guilty. Not yet. "We need to talk," she said, setting down her purse. "Yes, we do." I slid the manila folder across the table. "Starting with this." Nicole frowned and opened the folder. I watched her face change as she saw the photographs, the hotel receipts, the phone records. Surprise, then fear, then something that looked almost like relief. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Long enough. The question is, how long has it been going on?" She sat down across from me, her hands folded on the table like we were having a business meeting. 4 months. It wasn't supposed to happen, Grant. It just did. It just did. I repeated her words, tasting the lie in them. Like accidentally running a red light, like forgetting to pay a bill. Don't be sarcastic. This is hard enough. Hard for who? You? You've been planning this for months, Nicole. The divorce attorney, the asset searches, the joint credit card with Chad. You've been building your new life while lying to my face every single day. For the first time, she looked genuinely surprised. "How do you know about all that? I'm not as stupid as you think I am." Nicole stood up, paced to the window, then turned back to face me. When she spoke, her voice was different, colder, more honest than she'd been in years. "You're right," she said. "I have been planning this. Because I can't live like this anymore, Grant. I can't pretend to be happy with a man who comes home covered in other people's emergencies, who makes $40,000 a year, who thinks a night out is beer and wings at some dive bar." "So you decided to trade up." "I decided to find someone who understands me, someone with ambition, with goals beyond just getting through another shift." I felt something snap inside my chest, like a cable under too much tension. "Someone with money, you mean?" "Money matters, Grant. Security matters. Chad can give me things you never could." "Like what? A condo overlooking the river, a BMW, a country club membership?" She smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen on her face. "Like respect. Like a future that doesn't involve worrying about money every month, or listening to stories about drug addicts and car accidents over dinner." I stood up slowly, keeping my hands flat on the table. "You knew what I did when you married me. You said you were proud of me. I was 24 and stupid. People change, Grant. I changed. You didn't." "No," I said. "I didn't. I'm still the same man who works double shifts to pay for this house. Still the same man who held your hand through your father's cancer. Still the same man who's been faithful to you for 11 years while you've been screwing your boss in cheap motels." Nicole's face flushed red. "Don't you dare take the moral high ground with me. You think I don't know about your little drinking problem? Your nights at that disgusting bar with that criminal friend of yours?" "Mick's not a criminal, and I don't have a drinking problem. I have a wife problem." "Had," she said. "You had a wife problem. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, Grant. I wanted to tell you myself before you got served." I looked at her standing there in her designer suit, her hair perfect, her makeup flawless, and I realized I was looking at a stranger. The woman I'd married, the one who'd cried at romantic movies and brought me soup when I was sick, was gone. Maybe she'd been gone for years, and I'd been too blind to see it. "Fine," I said. "But you should know something, Nicole. I'm not going to make this easy for you." She laughed. "What are you going to do? Fight me for half of nothing?" I picked up the folder and smiled. "I'm going to tell Chad's wife exactly what her husband's been doing. I'm going to send copies of these photos to everyone at Morrison & Associates. I'm going to make sure the whole town knows exactly what kind of people you both are." The color drained from her face. "You wouldn't. Try me. That would destroy Chad's career, his marriage. Should have thought of that before you decided to destroy mine." Nicole stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Fear. Not of me, but of what I might do. Of what I was capable of. "Grant," she said, her voice softer now. We can handle this like adults. We don't have to hurt each other. You already hurt me, Nicole. Now it's my turn. I walked past her toward the door, Max following at my heels. At the threshold, I turned back. Oh, and Nicole? You can keep the house. I never want to see it again. The door slammed behind me with a satisfying bang. Patricia Wexler was nothing like I'd expected. When she opened the door of her real estate office, I found myself looking at a woman in her late 30s with short auburn hair and intelligent green eyes. She was attractive in an understated way, the kind of woman who didn't need designer clothes and perfect makeup to look good. Mrs. Wexler, I'm Grant Fowler. I called about wanting to discuss a property matter. She smiled and gestured me into her office. Of course, Mr. Fowler. Please, have a seat. Can I get you some coffee? I accepted the coffee and sat down across from her desk, studying the photos on her credenza. Patricia and Chad at what looked like a company party. Patricia with 2 golden retrievers on a hiking trail, a wedding photo from what must have been their marriage 3 years ago. So, she said, settling behind her desk, what kind of property are you looking for? Actually, Mrs. Wexler, I'm not here about real estate. I'm here about your husband. Her smile faltered. I'm sorry? I pulled out the manila folder and set it on her desk. My name is Grant Fowler. My wife is Nicole Fowler. She works with your husband at Morrison & Associates. Patricia's face went very still. She didn't touch the folder, but I could see her eyes tracking to it, then back to my face. I think you should look at what's in there, I said gently. She opened the folder with steady hands, her expression never changing as she flipped through the photographs and documents. When she finished, she closed it and folded her hands on top. How long? She asked. 4 months, as far as I can tell. Maybe longer. She nodded slowly. I suspected something. He's been working late, taking weekend trips, being secretive with his phone. But I trusted him. She looked up at me. I trusted him because he promised me, after his second divorce, that he'd learned his lesson. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. I know this isn't easy. Patricia laughed, but there was no humor in it. Easy? Mr. Fowler, this is the 3rd time I've had this conversation. Chad's first wife caught him cheating with a coworker. His second wife caught him cheating with a client. I thought I was different. You are different. You didn't deserve this. She studied my face for a moment. What do you want from me, Mr. Fowler? I want Chad to face consequences for what he's done. To both of us. And my wife? Her too. Patricia leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming silently on the desk. What kind of consequences are we talking about? The kind that make them both understand that actions have prices. She was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the busy street beyond. Finally, she turned back to me. I have copies of Chad's financial records, she said. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts. I also have access to his computer and his phone records. Would any of that be useful to you? I felt a surge of something that might have been hope. Very useful. Good. She stood up and walked to her filing cabinet. Because I've been documenting Chad's behavior for months just in case. I learned my lesson from his previous wives. Always have evidence. She pulled out a thick folder and set it beside mine. Financial records going back 6 months. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, purchases I didn't recognize. I even hired my own private investigator. You did? Like I said, Mr. Fowler, I've been through this before. The difference is, this time I'm not going to cry and forgive and pretend it didn't happen. Her green eyes were hard as glass. This time, I'm going to make sure Chad understands exactly what he's losing. We spent the next hour comparing notes, sharing information, planning strategy. Patricia was smart, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when it came to her husband's betrayal. By the time I left her office, we had a plan that would destroy both Chad and Nicole's carefully constructed new life. One more thing, Patricia said as I reached the door. I want to be there when it all comes down, I want to see Chad's face when he realizes what he's lost. You'll get your chance, I promised. That evening, I sat in my truck outside Morrison & Associates, watching the employees leave for the day. Chad emerged at 6:30, checking his phone as he walked to his BMW. He looked confident, successful, untouchable. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Phase 1 complete. Chad's computer has been compromised. All his files are now backed up to a secure server, including some very interesting emails. I smiled and typed back, Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Across the parking lot, Chad's BMW pulled out into traffic, heading toward what he thought was his perfect life. In the passenger seat, Max yawned and stretched, then looked at me with those understanding brown eyes. Tomorrow, boy, I said, scratching behind his ears. Tomorrow we start returning some favors. The war had begun. The Morrison & Associates annual company picnic was held at Riverside Park, the same place where Nicole and I had gotten engaged 8 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me as I walked through the crowd of HR professionals and their families, carrying a cooler full of beer and wearing my best fake smile. Nicole spotted me immediately. She was standing near the volleyball net with Chad, both of them looking like the perfect corporate couple. Her face went pale when she saw me. "Grant," she said as I approached. "What are you doing here?" "Sam invited me," I said, nodding toward Nicole's best friend, who was setting up a buffet table nearby. She thought it would be good for me to get out, meet some new people. Chad extended his hand with that politician smile of his. "Grant, right? Nicole's mentioned you. I'm Chad Wexler." I shook his hand, squeezing just a little harder than necessary. "Oh, I know exactly who you are, Chad. Nicole's told me all about you." Something flickered in his eyes, but the smile never wavered. "All good things, I hope." "Absolutely. She says you're very hands-on with your employees." Nicole grabbed my arm. "Grant, can I talk to you for a minute? Privately?" She pulled me away from the crowd, toward the trees by the river. "What the hell are you doing here?" "Enjoying a company picnic, meeting your coworkers, getting to know the people my wife spends so much time with." "Don't do this, Grant. Don't make a scene." "Make a scene?" "Nicole, I'm just being social. Isn't that what you always wanted? For me to take more interest in your work?" She stared at me, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She knew I was up to something, but she couldn't figure out what. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sam's voice carried across the park as she spoke into a portable microphone. If I could have everyone's attention, we're about to start the annual Morrison & Associates talent show. Nicole and I walked back to the crowd, where a small stage had been set up near the pavilion. Employees and their families were gathering around, some carrying instruments, others clutching index cards with jokes or poems written on them. "Our first performer," Sam announced, "is Grant Fowler, Nicole's husband. He's going to share some thoughts about marriage and partnership." Nicole's face went white. "Grant, no." But I was already walking toward the stage, pulling a folded piece of paper from my pocket. The crowd applauded politely as I took the microphone from Sam. "Thank you," I said, looking out at the sea of faces. "I want to talk today about trust, about what happens when the people we love most decide to betray that trust." I could see Chad pushing through the crowd, his face tight with concern. Nicole was frozen in place, her hands pressed to her mouth. 4 months ago, I continued, my wife started working late. Really late. Sometimes she wouldn't come home until midnight, exhausted from all those long hours at the office. A few people in the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. But here's the thing about being a paramedic. You learn to notice details. You learn to spot the signs when something's wrong. And I started noticing that my wife's late nights coincided with certain other people's schedules. Chad had reached the front of the crowd now, his face red with anger. "That's enough," he said loudly. I smiled at him. "Oh, I'm just getting started, Chad. See, I hired a private investigator. Amazing what those guys can find out when you give them a credit card and a suspicious mind. I pulled a photograph from my pocket and held it up. Even from a distance, it was clearly Nicole and Chad kissing in the parking lot of the Sunset Motel. The crowd erupted in whispers and gasps. Someone's child asked loudly, "Mommy, why is that lady kissing someone who's not her husband?" "Grant, stop!" Nicole was crying now, pushing through the crowd toward the stage. "But wait," I said, pulling out another photo. "There's more. Here's my loving wife and her boss checking into a hotel in Chicago. The same weekend she told me she was at a boring HR conference." Chad lunged for the stage, but two of his co-workers grabbed him, holding him back. "You snake!" he shouted. Now, Chad. Is that any way to talk in front of your employees? Speaking of which, where's your wife? Patricia, are you here?" Patricia emerged from the crowd, looking calm and composed. "I'm here, Grant." "Patricia, would you like to share what you discovered when you checked Chad's credit card statements?" She took the microphone from me, her voice steady and clear. "I found charges for hotels, restaurants, jewelry, and weekend trips that my husband never told me about. I also found email exchanges between Chad and Nicole discussing their plans to divorce their current spouses and move in together." The crowd was in full uproar now. Chad was screaming obscenities, being held back by three men. Nicole had collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Sam was trying to get the microphone back, but Patricia wasn't finished. "I've filed for divorce," she announced, "and I've forwarded all of Chad's emails to the Morrison & Associates Board of Directors. Apparently, company policy frowns on supervisors having private relationships with their subordinates." Chad broke free from the men holding him and charged the stage. I was ready for him. 15 years of boxing training kicked in as I sidestepped his clumsy rush and caught him with a right cross that dropped him to his knees. "That's for sleeping with my wife," I said. The crowd had gone completely silent. Chad was on his hands and knees, red liquid trickling from his nose. Nicole was still sobbing. Patricia stood beside me on the stage, holding the microphone like a weapon. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, taking the mic back. "Nicole, I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served with papers on Monday. I'm not asking for alimony or half the house. I just want you to know that everyone in this town now knows exactly what kind of person you are." I handed the microphone back to Sam, who was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. The crowd parted as I walked through them, Patricia falling into step beside me. "How do you feel?" she asked as we reached the parking lot. "Like I can breathe again," I said. Behind us, the Morrison & Associates annual company picnic was in complete chaos. Chad was being helped to his feet by co-workers who were already whispering about his future with the company. Nicole was surrounded by friends who were asking questions she couldn't answer. And I was walking away from all of it, finally free. 3 months later, I was sitting in Mick's bar, reading the local newspaper's business section. The headline made me smile. "Morrison & Associates settles harassment lawsuit." "Says here Chad Wexler was terminated for violations of company policy," I told Mick, who was wiping down glasses behind the bar. Apparently, sleeping with subordinates is frowned upon in the corporate world. "Imagine that," Mick said dryly. "What about Nicole?" "Fired 2 weeks after Chad. Turns out when your boss gets canned for sleeping with you, it reflects poorly on your professional judgment." Max looked up from his spot by the bar, tail wagging. He'd been a lot happier since we'd moved into the apartment above the boxing gym. No more tension, no more late-night arguments, just the sound of people working out downstairs and the occasional bark from the other dogs in the neighborhood. The door chimed, and Trevor walked in, looking as rumpled as ever. He slid onto the bar stool next to me and ordered a beer. "Thought you'd want to know," he said. "Chad's bankruptcy filing went through yesterday. Turns out Patricia took him for everything in the divorce. House, cars, retirement accounts, even the country club membership. Good for her. She's doing real well, by the way. Her real estate business is booming. Apparently, being the wronged wife in the town's biggest scandal has been great for publicity. I laughed. She's a smart woman. She'll be fine. What about Nicole? I shrugged. Last I heard, she moved back in with her parents. She's working as a receptionist at some insurance office across town. From HR manager to receptionist, that's gotta hurt. Not my problem anymore. Trevor finished his beer and stood up. Well, I've got to run. Got a cheating husband case in the suburbs. Seems like it's going around. After he left, I sat there thinking about the past few months. The divorce had been finalized 6 weeks ago. Nicole had tried to fight for alimony, but the evidence of her affair made that impossible. She'd kept the house, but without 2 incomes, she'd had to take out a second mortgage just to make the payments. Chad had it worse. Patricia's divorce attorney had been ruthless, and the harassment lawsuit from 2 other female employees at Morrison & Associates had finished him off professionally. He was working at a used car lot now, trying to rebuild his life from scratch. Any regrets? Mick asked, refilling my glass. About what? About how it all went down. The public humiliation, the scorched earth approach. I thought about it for a moment. They made their choices, Mick. They chose to lie, to cheat, to plan their future together while destroying the lives they'd already built. I just made sure there were consequences. And now? Now I'm free. No more wondering where my wife is at night. No more pretending everything's fine when it's not. No more walking on eggshells in my own house. I looked around the bar, at the regulars nursing their drinks, at the boxing posters on the walls, at Max sleeping contentedly by my feet. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest. It was real. I start teaching EMT classes at the community college next month, I said. Mick's letting me use the gym for fitness training. I'm thinking about getting certified as a personal trainer, too. Sounds like a plan. It's a start. The door chimed again, and a woman walked in. She was about my age, with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing scrubs that suggested she worked at the hospital. She looked around uncertainly, like she wasn't sure she was in the right place. "Excuse me," she said to Mick. "I'm looking for Grant Fowler. I heard he might be here." Mick nodded toward me. "That's him." She walked over, extending her hand. "Mr. Fowler, I'm Dr. Sarah Martinez from General Hospital. I heard you're starting EMT classes, and I wondered if you might be interested in doing some guest lectures for our emergency medicine residents." I shook her hand, noticing the way she smiled, the intelligence in her eyes. "I'd be happy to discuss it, Dr. Martinez. Please call me Sarah, and maybe we could discuss it over coffee sometime. I mean, if you're free." I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not just attraction, but possibility. The sense that my life was beginning again, rather than ending. "I'm free," I said. "Very free." As Sarah and I made plans to meet for coffee the next day, I caught Mick's eye in the mirror behind the bar. He was grinning, the kind of grin that said he approved of this new development. Outside, the sun was setting over Cedar Drive, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere out there, Nicole was probably sitting in her childhood bedroom wondering how her life had gone so wrong. Chad was probably trying to sell cars to people who recognized him from the newspaper, and I was sitting in a bar with my dog, making plans to have coffee with a beautiful doctor, teaching the next generation of paramedics, and building a life that was completely, honestly mine. It had taken the destruction of my marriage to realize that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is losing something you thought you needed. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about freeing yourself to become who you were always meant to be. I raised my glass to Mick, to Max, to the future I was just beginning to see. "Here's to new beginnings," I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it.